Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, How ESG Regulations Impact the Restaurant Industry, organized by Apicbase in collaboration with Max Burgers and Conceptional. Thank you very much for joining us today here. We have two exceptional speakers today. We have Fred van Aken, who is ESG expert at Conceptional, and Kaj Török, Chief Sustainability Officer at Max Burgers. And together with both of them, we will be looking into ESG regulations for the hospitality and restaurant industry. My name is Carl Jacobs, and I'm a co-founder and CEO at Apicbase, and I am your host today. So please be welcomed in this webinar. From a perspective of organizing webinars, I think it's also important to mention a little bit what Apicbase stands for, because at Apicbase, we are actually dedicated to contributing to a sustainable food service business. And we do that by building software that helps businesses pushing for zero waste and a healthy bottom line. And that's been in our vision since 2017. That's actually already a long time before a lot of the businesses that we work with were thinking about sustainability. Some of them were already quite ahead of that, but let's say that it's something that is very new since a few years. And with the ESG regulations, it's also even more important. But by doing this as a vision, driving sustainable food services businesses, we also think that we should not do this just by building software, but also by informing our industry and helping them grow, also by understanding what ESG means, what all of the concepts mean. And that's also why we organize this webinar today. What we do in daily life is build a best-in-class F&B management software, which works right out of the box. Basically, you just have to, set it up, and then you can actually work with it. But we also have software that is very open for customer specific. So we know not known businesses alike, so we can always adapt the software to the needs of our customers. And if you look from a value perspective, I think Apicbase contributes to 4 pillars in the organization. The first one is operational excellence. It's all about delivering a seamless experience throughout your whole business by making sure that all of the recipes are the same, that you have organizational efficiency throughout the whole back of house. The second pillar is margin improvement and making sure that you control your costs, especially in times like these where costs are rising heavily. And if you can maintain your margin, you will be a more and healthier food business. The third pillar, the third value is food safety. Unfortunately, not a lot of people like to talk about this, and more and more regulations come to the food service industry. And I think software can be a great enabler of making sure you are compliant to all of these legislations, such as allergens, such as, of course, carbon footprint, ESG. All of that can be maintained and enabled by software. And of course, the fourth pillar is our sustainable growth pillar, in which we help businesses control their waste, report on carbon footprint. And of course, within this pillar, it is that this webinar is actually organized. And finally, I would like to tell you a little bit about the system itself. I won't go too much in detail. We are always open to have that conversation in private with any of you. But Apicbase is a world of solutions. So we are a single platform, totally dedicated to the back of house. And actually, we help and we go with our customers along the way, starting with menu development, enabling them to procure in a smooth way, opening up their inventory, registering waste, CPU and internal ordering, all the way to HACCP, traceability, menu planning, etc. And all of the modules that we built are actually all serving the 4 pillars of the 4 values that we want to bring to businesses, which is operational excellence, cost savings, food safety, and sustainability. And that being said, I think it's time to introduce the first speaker of the day, and that is Fred van Aken. He is the ESG expert at Conceptional, and he will open up the conversations. Fred, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carl. Pleasure to be there. Hello, everyone. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I would like to provide you with some insights and practical stepping stones to help you to embark on your journey to integrate sustainability within your business. Please allow me just a couple of words on who we are as Conceptional. We like to describe ourselves as creative minds in sustainable F&B strategy and solutions. And we focus our services on a couple of areas, which is F&B placemaking, F&B brand and concept development, F&B performance and growth enhancement, and support emergence and acquisitions. And over the last couple of years, we have been supporting our clients in their transition towards a more sustainable future. And as I told you earlier, to integrate sustainability as part of doing your business. Where do we operate? Over the last 14 years, we have operated in more than 20 countries, executing over 400 projects. And basically, we are performing our projects from the sectors of travel to shopping experience up to hospitality and catering and education and care. And what is important to understand is that sustainability requires a different approach in each and every segment, even almost each and every part of the day or part of the customer journey of a customer. The attitude will change whether you're in the travel segment and whether you want confronted with sustainability, or whether you're in a leisure park and you're confronted with sustainability. That adds, I would say, to the complexity. So talking about the sustainable food route, basically, let's be honest, it's time to move. But if you start to move, how? How do you stay on target? How do you make impact? And how do you stay in control? And of course, what we love to see is that everybody's intrinsically motivated to start a journey, but there are also a lot of extrinsic factors which already are accumulating. So you need to connect to the changing needs of your target audience. It's a precondition for employability for the younger generation, and the competition around you will start to move and take new ground. And if you're not at that playing field, you will be left out. And maybe one of the most important one, which we talk about a little bit later, is there are a lot of laws and regulations and reporting requirements. They are coming your way, and they're coming fast, and they're coming in full force. And in the end of the day, the world is becoming more transparent. People want to know where you stand. So we are all going to move. And what is important there is that you make a distinction between the fact that it's not a trend, but it's a transition. It's not a choice you have. We all want to move. And I think that's a fundamental difference between the trends. So as a food service sector, we need to move towards a sustainable future. But we are very good in putting all kinds of barriers on the table, why we should not move or not move today, and maybe it's difficult. And just to mention a couple of them, which we basically can counter, there's no knowledge or overview of what is sustainability. And I think that's changing rapidly, and hopefully this webinar helps you and also in further understanding. There's no knowledge about the impact on our operations or margins. If we start to move, what will it do with my P&L? What will it do with my operational organization? There's a lot of best practices already, and we can share it with each other. It's too expensive, or they're not concrete enough. And what we hear a lot of times is, yes, but my consumer is not up for it yet. And you can manage that at the end of the day. So what we believe in is that starting the journey is as important as achieving the targets, because we believe that once you start to move, you start to learn, you start hopefully to have also fun, because it's important to have it, but also you will see where you can make the best impact. So don't underestimate the impact you already can make on short-term decisions. Not everything is difficult, not everything is long-term. Something is happening with my screen, Carl. Here we go. So we're back again. So what we want to provide you with is 7 key stepping stones to start. First of all, of course, understand the playing field. What is the impact of rules and regulations for yourself? What is your own role and position? And how to keep your target audience on board. And at the end of the day, determine what is your baseline, what is your current impact, how can I optimize it, and which direction are you heading to? And if we then zoom in on understanding the playing field, the question is... I'm losing control sometimes on the sheets, but maybe we can help each other, Carl. The definition of what is ESG is also done by the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. Of course, everybody understands ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And then within those sectors and domains, you will see a focus on climate change, pollution, biodiversity, and circularity, for instance, on environmental. And within the social chapter, you will see impact of your operations on your own workforce, workers in the value chains, and that value chain has become extremely important within the approach towards CSRD, but also looking at the affected community. So it's very important to understand it's not only about the CO2 reduction. So you need to move away from carbon tunnel vision. There's a lot more at stake here, but it requires a balanced approach. And in principle, it requires a rebalance of how you do business. Hopefully already entrepreneurship, customer need and satisfaction, financial health and performance is already driving your business and driving your decisions. And there we need to add the corporate responsibility approach. Turning that around, it also means that corporate responsibility cannot be approached in isolation. It always needs to be done in correlations with the other drivers. So what are then the main focus areas you can make a difference on? 3 main focus areas. That's called food and packaging, of course, within our business, kitchen process, design and construction. But you also need to enhance your organization and legal policy, set up your systems and procedures, and utilize communication and branding, both internally, but especially also towards your customers. How can you nudge them into a more sustainable consumer behavior? Once you understand what the playing field is, then it's very important to understand, of course, what are the impacts of the rules and regulations which are coming your way at this moment. There's a whole set of new regulations. And of course, to be expected is there are a lot of new regulations coming our way as well as the sense of urgency hopefully is increasing. So it ranges from single-use plastic directives for large corporates will become very strict on due diligence, which will take a couple of years before they come in place. And a very important one, which I zoom in a little bit later, is about the corporate sustainability reporting directives. But also very much to understand that the Green Claims Directive is in place. You are not allowed to make all kinds of claims on sustainability if it's not supported by facts. And I think that measurement part of it will become quite important. And the speed and the impact of these regulations have been, I think, quite much misunderstood by a lot of companies within our business. One of the most important directives at this moment, which is driving a lot of change because there is the necessity to start measuring, to start acting, is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. When do you qualify for it? If you meet 2 out of those 3 criteria. So you need to have 25 million in assets or more, 50 million in sales or more, or having 250 employees. And if you meet 2 of these criteria, then you need to start reporting about 3 different scopes. Scope 1 is about own emission and impact. Scope 2 is about energy usage. And for me, the most important one, Scope 3, is the impact of the full value chain. So what is the impact, ecological impact of the value chains up till the moment you're going to render your service to your clients or your consumers? And when, basically since yesterday, a lot of organizations already need to start by the 1st of Jan, and the remainder will kick in per 2025. So it's all about taking ownership of and cooperation within your value chain. We need to work together on this. And even when it's not directly applicable, it will influence you and all the other operators around you and the key actors. So we're part of one and the same ecosystem and value chain. So you can't isolate yourself from these changes. So if you know what is the playing field, if you know what are the rules and regulations, it's all about what is my own role and position. And a lot of questions to be asked and visions to be set. But one of the most important one is, okay, am I intrinsically motivated to make the change? Am I therefore principle-led, or am I more extrinsically motivated and therefore I'm more consumer-led? And both are fine, because sometimes maybe you want to move fast, but your organization, your customers around you are not able to move that quickly. So if you have a mismatch between your intention and your action and what is available or possible, then the impact of your actions will be less or even will fail. And once you've said that, then of course it's quite important. I want to move, but how do I get or keep my target audience on board? And it's very important to understand is how can I match the brand, the organization and target group around the theme of sustainability? And of course, we all know there is not a one common target audience. There are different segments. And therefore, it's also important that you start to segment your target audience along the axis of sustainability. This is just an example of it, where we have 4 segments ranging from idealists, trend followers, block ones to conservatives. Very much important to understand is that everybody is engaged in sustainability, but each in their own way. Some positive, the majority hopefully, but some negative. But how can you approach them? If you look, for instance, at the conservatives, which will be maybe anti-sustainability, anti-everything which is forced upon them, it's very much important to understand that you can play the card of authenticity, of craftsmanship, of local and fresh, and therefore you can nudge them into a more sustainable consumer behavior. The trend follower wants to see something hip, flashy, brand driven, and will follow, and the idealists want to see information. So it's very much important to understand how is your target audience segmented on that one. And once you have done that and then group those together, you need to start to understand what is your baseline, how you can optimize your baseline already on the short term, and which direction you are heading towards in the upcoming years. So measuring the baseline means managing on data and insights. And that means in principle also for the upcoming years that you still are in control. So you need to determine what are my main KPIs I want to use in measuring sustainability over those 4 themes. So ranging from CO2e impact, energy, water, land use consumption, but of course also managing your food waste, your residual flows, and your circularity index. What you need as a minimum is have an integrated kitchen management system and food data management system in place, so understand what are my recipes, what are my SKUs, add tooling and data for measurement and modeling of environmental KPIs. There are a lot of tools and databases available for that one. Add data for non-product related sources, and then build it into a clear management report and dashboard together with your other financial and non-financial information, and make sure it's part of your daily business. And once you have done that and you understand what your current ecological impact is, you can start to move. And there are many dials you can turn to optimize as of day one. Small steps, big steps. Each and every focus area will have their dials. Of course, it's for clear that one of the biggest impacts you can have is the whole discussion about the protein transition from animal protein to more plant-based. But sometimes maybe you need to start with your organization and legal policy to set up that first. But you can start moving today. And once you know what you need to do today, you also can start to think about tomorrow. Not everything needs to be done at once, because your organization will not have it, your people will not have it, your consumers will not have it, but you need to map it out. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, but you can start move, of course, the ground directly. The other observation there is if you want to make impact, of course, we tend to look at that footprint impact, those big steps. But sometimes also you need to single out those initiatives which have a little bit smaller footprint impact, but a bigger impact, which means that you need to look for high impact communication. Yes, because what is important in this whole journey is the storytelling, internally as well as externally. It needs to be honestly, of course, but I think it's very important to single out those initiatives as well. So in conclusion, start a journey, enjoy, learn from it, and work together to make that impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred, for this very interesting introduction in the ESG topics. It was, as people can see, it is quite a lot, but I think indeed, as you say, baby steps is what you need to take. Somebody who has taken those steps already and who knows where it goes, who knows that it is a marathon, is Kaj Török. Kaj is Chief Sustainability Officer at Max Burgers, and he will now go a little bit more in depth into how Max Burgers made that transition. And actually, I believe that they are intrinsically motivated. So very interesting, very interested to hear what he has to say. I will give Max the control over the presentation. Kaj, sorry, voila, and I will mute myself.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, we're both extrinsically and intrinsically motivated, I think. We want to do the right thing, but we're also having to study the different audiences and our guests. What are they prepared to do? Because we can have all the ideas about how people should change, but how do they want to change? So I'm going to lead you through our journey. We started off in 1968 above the polar circle in Sweden in a small town called Gällivare. It's Kurt and Britta, young people falling in love and opening that grill. And today it's their sons, Richard and Christopher, who's CEO and wise CEO, and we're still family owned. And I think the first sustainability decisions was already made in '69 that we remember, and that was, should you have winter tires or should we have an aluminum box for recycling of cardboard? And we chose cardboard at that time. And if there's any place you need winter tires, it's above the polar circle. So it was actually a commitment. Today we've grown to 193 restaurants, 7,500 employees, almost 15 green meals on our menu. That's like the ovo vegetarian or fully plant-based. Our vision is to be the best burger chain in the world, and that is just sometimes corporate bullshit. You know, everyone wants to be the best, and I think everyone wants to believe in it. But what is the reason to believe in it? Can we believe it in ourselves? And in Sweden, we have, according to the Swedes, the tastiest burgers. We are number one in guest satisfaction the last 19 years in a row, and we have been winning all the sustainability rankings ever made in our industry in Sweden. So that's what we want to bring out into the world. We exist to make good food in a good way for a good world, and that is both about taste of our products, experience for our guests, but also about society. Our ambition when it comes to sustainability is to be a global role model. That means we need to do things really, really, really well. And at the same time, we have to also spread the message about what we're doing so that others can be inspired. That's why I'm here today. I'm trying, and with all of that said, I would just say that Max is far, far from perfect. Most things are yet to be done when it comes to sustainability. And I'm not going to talk about all things sustainability. We work with health, fairness, environment, and engagement for health, fairness, and environment. So that's kind of our focus areas. But I would like just to go into climate here, since we've been working with that the most. And this is a situation from the climate today. We were thinking when we started off this climate work internally at Max in 2007, I was part of those discussions. And we were thinking maybe in the future we will see the differences, but actually they could have been seen already then. This is from Svalbard in northern Norway. Almost, it's 80 years between these photos. So the global warming has been stronger in these areas. So you can see the differences sooner. And now we're in a situation where we, for the 11th month in a row, has global monthly record temperatures, 11 months in a row. So what you can see here is that the gray area here is all the years since 1940, and then the red year is 2023, and the yellow year is 2024. So what can we do in a situation like this, where UN says it's about collective action or collective suicide? It's such a big word. What should we do? Well, we need to transform. And that means bigger changes than just double-sided printing at the office or going from plastic straws to paper straws. It's about changing the business model in its core. And the first part to change is just to say that at Max, we're part of the problem. We are part of the problem. And that means we need to be part of the solution. And you know, if you go to Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't been there, but I've heard that the first step is to just say, I'm an alcoholic. And it's not because we wanted to create a bad climate or anything. It's involuntary from all of us, but it's just how society is set up. We're all part of this problem. So then what is the major problem with Max? This is our carbon footprint for 2002. It covers everything from the farmer's land to the guest's hand and even the guest journey back and forth to the restaurant. That is scope 1, 2, and 3. So what you can see here is everything. And actually scope 1 and 2 is easy to measure. That's less than 1% of our total footprint. So more than 99% of our footprint is in scope 3, and that's why it's so important to measure. But of our total footprint, 55% in 2022 came from beef. And beef has, since 1968, of course, been our cash cow. That's how we made money. And it is also, this company should be family owned for at least 7 generations, we said. So then we need to have a business model that is aligned with what society needs. And society needs us to reduce carbon footprint. And that is, so what we need to do is just to realize that we have a beef with our own beef today. So we need to change what we do. And when we look at our burgers, it's just so big difference between different alternatives. So you go for the classical beef burger, 4.3 kilo carbon dioxide, to the crispy sandwich, a plant-based burger, 0.3. So you can reduce your carbon footprint with more than 90% by just moving your hands, and you can still eat something really tasty. And that is a huge potential for us. And if you buy a Tesla, you can probably reduce carbon footprint with 50% compared to a fossil car. What it really means is that on Max menu today, we have not only Teslas, but we have super duper Teslas of the future. But the question is then, are they just on the menu or are they also getting bought? One of the things we made already in 2008 to help them being bought is to inform our guests what are the things with low carbon footprint. So we launched the world's first climate labeled menu at that time, and we still keep it on. So you can see the low carbon dioxide here is those alternatives. And you can actually click on the website and so on to see the exact figures as well. But last year we had a goal: every second meal sold should be made without beef. And as you can see, the sales on meals with red meat has gone down dramatically, and without red meat going up as a percentage of total sales volume. So until the pandemic, this change looked easy to us. And then with the pandemic, it all flattened out a little bit. And I haven't brought in the 2023 figures here yet, but we actually ended up on 46% as a whole year for the whole group. But in Denmark, we ended up on 53%. So it's a little bit different on different markets. So we're close to it anyway. And it really reduces our carbon footprint in a dramatic way. So we have reduced our carbon footprint with 28% between 2015 and 2022. And since we're changing what we're selling, we were thinking, why don't we change what we're called and what kind of industry we're in? So we changed our name from Max Hamburger Restaurants to Max Burgers, because we know now that there's so many good things we can serve between two breads that has a low climate impact and that tastes awesome. So it's just there to remind ourselves and everyone else that we're actually in another industry now. And a part of our work has given us attention, the World First Climate Positive Menu, Global Climate Action Award from UN. It's all good stuff. But also we've managed to make a splash in Sweden, where we have 90% or 85% of our restaurants. So the Swedes were asked the question, which companies do you know that actively works to take climate responsibility for the climate? And this is an unaided question. So people are not helped with any names. And 2/3 of Swedes can't answer that question. So companies are famous for destroying the climate, but most people can't give an example of any company that helps fix it. But of the Swedes, 7% still says Max, 3% says Arla, SAS, IKEA, Vattenfall, and the rest is lower. So that means Max is not most famous for fixing the climate in Sweden. We're just least unknown. And also, I learned something else from this, and that is that Max has a 93% improvement potential. What if we could do a better job here? What would it do to our own internal pride? What would it do about the image of what a company is? What would it do for the hope that we can actually fix the climate if more people got on board? But, it's so many things you want to do around sustainability. But somewhere it has to come down to the company bottom line as well. So how do they relate? Are you going to be profitable just because you do sustainability? I do not think so. But are you going to, in the long run, be able to be sustainable if you're having a business model that just goes 180% in the wrong direction compared to what society wants? I don't think so either. But these are some of the fronts that for us are adding to our profit when it comes to sustainability. We can attract guests with it, and we know we have taken guests away from our competitors. They're coming up to us instead because we have a more conscious offer. We can engage employees, and we don't know exactly how much it's worth, but if we're easier to attract talent, retain talent, and if they're even more committed when they work with us, it's just big money directly. We're opening up new markets, that's also important. Sweden's largest amusement park, Liseberg, threw out 4 Burger King restaurants because they wanted to work with sustainability, and we got 3 Max restaurants there instead because we were working with sustainability, market entry. Sometimes it's worth a lot of money because you could save it. So low food waste is really good. Easier financing, cheaper loans, but also attracting financiers, investors. That's a good part. I do think, though, that the most important thing is the business development. If the world is going to change and we're going to fix the climate, we're going to have to eat something different. And we have had a 900% sales increase of our green burgers, that's lacto-ovo vegetarian or fully plant-based burgers, from 2% in 2014 to 18% in 2021. And that is a segment that we would not have pushed as hard if it wasn't for the climate issue. So it's actually helping us in innovate. But I would just like to end off with this, what I really believe in. Sustainability is a long journey. We are trying to invent a future we haven't seen yet. No company is sustainable. We don't know what the sustainable world is, but we still have to start acting now. So we need to do the right thing now instead of the perfect thing later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaj, for this very interesting and moving presentation. The cool thing is that you immediately feel that this is not just greenwashing or greenhushing, or not greenwashing and greenhushing. This is really coming from where it needs to come. Dare I say, coming from the heart, from really the understanding that this is the way forward and the only way forward. Thank you very much for that, Kaj. I now move into the debate. Let me see if I can move the screen. Yes. Of course, this is important to the audience. Please, if you have any questions, there is a button on your screen which you can use, and it's called QA, I believe, which you can use to ask any questions to Kaj, to Fred, or to myself about the ESG. And please feel free to use that button as much as you want. Also, we have 4 polls ready for you. So we will pop them up during the debate. Feel free to vote so we can understand where you are in the journey of ESG. And that brings me to the first question, which I gladly want to ask Fred. Fred, I'm just going to throw the title of the presentation or of the webinar into your face and I say, okay, so what is the impact of all of the regulations on this on the hospitality industry?
I think it's a huge driver. I think what you've seen over the last couple of years is people, of course, were aware of the fact that sustainability is important. So you didn't need to advocate that sustainability is something we need to look at. But what we didn't see, and what I still sometimes do not see, is the sense of urgency. And all of a sudden there was the Green Deal, and the Green Deal set forward a lot of directives, including reporting, with a very strict timeline. So all of a sudden, all medium-sized, bigger companies need to start taking responsibility for sustainability on a lot of data points and start to organize themselves around the theme of sustainability. So I think it's from my perspective, it's a huge help and it's a huge workload everybody gets on their plate. But I think it's therefore very important that it has come and it has a huge impact as such.
Mm-hmm. Kaj, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just see that. I think there's a huge need for people working with all these regulations right now. And it's like a huge wave over all the companies that has to staff up properly. And I think the coming years, we're going to have to work so much with compliance. I think that's good, the ambitions coming from EU, but what I've seen working mostly in sustainability to get those profits is an innovation. And it's going to be hard to innovate and do compliance at the same time. So I just hope that companies are managing to do both during these coming 5 years or 3 years.
All right. Kaj, to stay with you for a second, we heard Fred in the presentation, we have different types of customers. We have the conservatives who think it's all exaggerated, and we have the idealists who would love to eat only plants, almost, you could say.
Yeah.
do you know which target group you are targeting, and how do you convince the consumer to follow what you are doing?
Yeah, I mean, we're in our own market. We're bigger than Burger King and smaller than McDonald's. The average Swede visits us 6 times a year. So we're well known, and that means we have really wide audiences. And of course, when it comes to sustainability messaging, we would know that the idealists are our best friends. So they are the ones that really needs to be our ambassadors. But on the other hand, we need to talk to everybody, and I think you can. But the most important nudge or thing we could ever do to create this transition is to make sure that our burgers with low climate impact taste at least as good as the burgers with high climate impact. So taste is everything for our guests, everything for our sales, everything for, as it turns out, our climate, and therefore, because 1/3 of all climate emissions in the world is actually from food. And that means that taste is everything for the future of humanity. And that's a challenge, but I'm happy still in one way, because taste is the passion of most people in the restaurant industry, and that's their home turf. So go out there and make really tasty meals with low climate impact. That's an opportunity.
Yeah. So if I hear you and I simplify it a little bit, not changing the menu is not an option.
Not if you accept that there is climate change and the world needs to transform.
Of course, yeah.
And I think even if you would be conservative, most conservatives today say we know there's climate change.
Yeah.
And the surprising thing I learned a couple of years ago was that actually no one is against plant-based burgers if they taste great. If they don't taste great, that's another thing. So it doesn't matter if you're conservative then or not. So in there and make the meals just tastier and more interesting.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I think it's very important to understand is, there's also the difference between being principle-led or consumer-led. Are you setting yourself up for failure? So you come with an alternative, but you didn't put the effort in to make it really taste good and really promote it in the right way. And then you see, you see it doesn't work and we can't move. Or are you principle-led? You say, okay, we're going to make the best burger you've ever tasted. And then the world starts to change. And I think that's absolutely the right approach there.
Yeah, and it's so hard to get it right. I mean, it is innovation. It's not just small changes. It is really innovation. And from that perspective, we need to understand that it takes some effort.
Yeah. And actually, I want to continue on this a little bit, because scope 3 is, of course, the whole, let's say, farm to fork kind of journey of all of the food that you're serving. I want to repeat the question actually, and to Fred maybe. Of course, we know what Kaj is doing. He's really reinventing food, basically. He's making great new burgers, and people love them. But what is it possible to still, make an improvement if you don't do that and just look at your food chain or the value chain throughout the whole farm to fork thing, and how can you impact that?
I think what is important there to understand is if you look at say procurement cycle, they are 6 months, 12 months ahead. And what you see there a lot of times is then you say, okay, there's no product available, or it's too expensive and the impact we cannot take. And I think what it requires also within the value chains, but also with, let's say, competitors or other partners, and there are a lot of combination also, for instance, in the Dutch market, where big parties are working together from a procurement perspective, is okay, how is that agenda looking like in 2027 and 2028? And are we able, in combination with suppliers and with the value chain, to really start coming up with alternatives? So it needs more long-term commitments, and you need to move away from the short-term cycle, because it will always be too expensive if we don't have available product, up to setting ambitions on 2028 and get that agenda up and going.
So that's basically the role of the wholesaler. You're there including in the whole ESG path, I guess.
I think it's a combination of the wholesaler, because they represent a lot of volume, and also their clients, and also their, like I said, the larger clients, like the catering company of the multi-unit operators, which all are confronted with the same problem. Where do I find the right product innovations? Where do I find enough product availability? And how can I make sure it is cost efficient? And volume plays a big role. So setting an agenda together within the market will become crucially.
Mm-hmm. Kaj and Fred, Kaj, you are a large enterprise, you could say. You are fitting within these scope 3 first category of businesses. Fred, you are working with those businesses. What are the from a pay it forward perspective, what can smaller restaurant chains or even individual restaurants learn from the experiences and the pioneering that you guys are doing, basically, and the larger businesses are doing in this thing? Kaj, you first, maybe?
Yeah, okay. So if you're really small, maybe there's just one restaurant, and you don't have to care about the big compliance thing from EU and stuff. And I think you could just remember that when it comes to sustainability, no one can do everything. Everyone can do something. What if it just was one thing that you did? What if you just got started with one thing? Which thing would that be? Make a note of that. It could give you energy. It could be interesting. And then you learn along the way. So start with just one step and don't look at the whole journey. If you're really tiny, just get going and learn and be curious. And
Yeah. Fred, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I think what you have, especially with smaller and mid-sized companies, you can make it much more personal as well. So if you really truly believe you want to make an impact, you can start expressing it, and you really start to tell that story, and you talk about pay it forward, and there it starts. Me as a restaurateur, I find it very important that we change our future. And I need your help, dear customer. So therefore, we introduce the following, or we have decided that. And it's all those little stones you put into the pond, which starts to cascade into a bigger wave. And I think that is extremely important as such. So I think the opportunity you have as a smaller entrepreneur, you're way more flexible, and therefore your speed can be higher than those larger corporations. And the trial and error within the limits of your business model and P&L can be there.
All right. Let us turn to the audience for a moment. One of the questions that came in was, what are your thoughts on the new flag guidance? Are you familiar with this term? And what is your standpoint on that? I see Kaj nodding, so Kaj, please go for it.
Yeah, I think the flag guidance should be connected to SBTI. That means Science Based Target Initiative. And that means some more guidance on how to reduce your carbon footprint. And actually at Max, we're not part of SBTI. We think it's a great initiative, but we have calculated our 2050 goal anyway. We did that a couple of years ago. And actually WRI, World Resource Institute, has also calculated exactly the same goal. And now I'm going to give it to you. It's 0.66 kilo carbon dioxide equivalents per 1,000 kilocalories. So it's a measure of the carbon footprint of your food in 2050, when we are maybe 10 billion people on the planet, and we eat within the borders of a climate. So for us, that has been easier to go with that we're just following the target for society instead of going with all these different frameworks. SBTI is great for those of you who it fits, go there, but there are others as well. So yeah, maybe you need SBTI to actually show others that you're doing climate action. So it could have other values, of course.
All right. Thank you. Fred, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you start to believe in the actual target set. So what you see is that, especially on sea level, a lot of targets have been set towards 2030, about 50% reduction on emission. But then you see within organizations, people, okay, that's a lot or feels a lot. 50% is a lot. And I think what these kind of initiatives and guidance help is to understand, yeah, but the whole market is moving towards that target. So sharing and working together, and this is one of those initiatives as well as SBTI, it's very important. People say, yes, guys, this is the route we're going to take. And these are the objectives we're going to try to pursue. And the more of these framework regulations and directives will definitely help in become a bigger believer, I would say, within the organization that things are possible.
All right. Keeping in mind time, I'm going to ask one more question, and that is, or maybe two. If you move towards sustainability, that also has a cost impact. And how do you manage that impact? Maybe Fred, if you want to start off.
Yeah, I think the first thing to understand is that people want to move, but they don't want to pay more. So you need to accept it will have an impact initially on your bottom line. But I think, as Kaj already mentioned, there is an ROI as well on sustainability. It's not only about cost price, it's about your business. So I think that's the first step you need to take. So yes, there's a cost-driven effect, but there's also an opportunity there. The second thing is that we need to move away from percentage thinking within P&L. So we want to maintain our 30 or 25, 35% cost of goods sold to euro value. If my transition from non-sustainable to sustainable costs me a certain euro value, what part of the euro value can I one-on-one compensate with my customers, or I would say subsidize with my other product categories. And therefore then the inflating effect of additional costs will be way less. It requires a different way of thinking, but I think that's an opportunity there as well. And I said, it's never in isolation. It's one product, but one product is part of way bigger categories, including, for instance, your drinks. And therefore the total impact can be way less than what you initially think. So if you are a believer, if you're intrinsically motivated, you will find a way around it. If you're a little bit more at the backseat, then you can misuse these kind of arguments to not move.
All right. Kaj, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just sometimes think about it as different cost posts. But if we're now need to do, at least large companies need to do a lot of compliance, that's just a cost short term. Just bite the sour apple. That's how it is. It's not something you chose. But then it's stuff that you do voluntarily. I think you should try to calculate it as an investment. So is it going to be a good investment or a bad investment? Just look at it. You're good at business. I think you are. Your company exists because it's been good at business. So try to look at it from that lens and see, where can we get this kind of return on investment? If you are having a buffet and there's so much food waste every day, there's a potential there. If you have competitors that are not doing a lot around sustainability, well, there's an opportunity. If you have a hard time hiring people, well, there's an opportunity there. So just connect the dots, I think.
All right. Keeping in mind time, I think we have to call it a day here. Kaj and Fred, thank you very much for joining the webinar on ESG regulations. I think it was very interesting. And thank you very much for being our guests.
Thank you very
much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. And to the audience, I also want to thank you all for tuning in and staying with us for a long hour or for a short hour. We will, of course, follow up with the recording of the webinar, and we will also let you know the results of the poll in the email that we will send. So you can discover where you are in comparison to the other people in the webinar. Thank you very much again, and see you next time. Goodbye.